Hollywood is reeling after Danny DeVito. The iconic everyman of film and television was forcibly removed from the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live in a jaw-dropping confrontation that no one saw coming. What should have been a light-hearted promotional appearance exploded into a fiery clash, exposing a side of Jimmy Kimmel that shatters his polished late-night persona. In a display of blatant disrespect, Kimmel pushed DeVito to the breaking point, turning a routine interview into a spectacle of hostility that has insiders spilling the tea. This isn't just gossip. It's a raw look at the power plays behind late-night television. Stick around as we unpack the shocking details, and make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story reveals the real Jimmy Kimmel like never before. According to crew members who witnessed the chaos, the trouble started well before DeVito even stepped onto the stage. The veteran actor arrived at the studio in his usual good spirits, cracking jokes with the staff and sharing stories from his decades in the industry. Danny was a total pro. One lighting technician recalled. He was asking people's names, thanking us for our work, just making everyone feel at ease. DeVito was there to promote his latest project, a gritty indie film that's been generating Oscar buzz, and he seemed genuinely excited to share it with Kimmel's audience. But the vibe shifted when Kimmel showed up barely an hour before the taping. Sources say the host was in a foul mood, snapping at his team and brushing off DeVito. During their brief pre-show meeting, Jimmy didn't even make eye contact with Danny. A production assistant revealed he was complaining about the segment order, saying he didn't have time to deal with another self-important actor. It was so uncalled for. This frosty reception set the stage for what would become a masterclass in unprofessionalism. When the show kicked off, the audience could sense something was off. Kimmel's introduction of DeVito was flat, lacking the warmth or humor he typically reserves for A-list guests. As DeVito bounded onto the stage, his infectious energy lighting up the room, Kimmel barely stood to greet him, offering a half-hearted handshake that felt more like a formality than a welcome. The contrast couldn't have been starker. DeVito all charm and gratitude versus Kimmel visibly detached and itching for a fight. The interview started with standard questions about DeVito's new film, but it didn't take long for Kimmel's tone to sour. Instead of engaging with the project, he veered into oddly personal territory, asking DeVito about his early career struggles in a way that felt more like a dig than genuine curiosity. You've been at this forever. Danny, ever think about slowing down, maybe letting the younger guys take the spotlight? Kimmel asked with a smirk. The audience chuckled nervously, but DeVito, ever the professional, deflected with a laugh. I'm just getting started, Jimmy. This business keeps you young if you love it. Kimmel wasn't satisfied, sure, but let's be real. Some of those early roles, like didn't you play a lot of weirdos and losers? The question landed like a jab, and DeVito's smile faltered for a split second. I played characters with heart, he replied, his voice steady. Every role's a chance to tell a story, whether it's a king or a cab driver. The audience clapped, but Kimmel's expression tightened, his eyes narrowing, as if annoyed that DeVito hadn't taken. The bait insiders later noted that Kimmel seemed determined to unsettle his guest. He gets like that sometimes. A stage and manager confided if a guest doesn't play into his shtick, he starts poking harder, like he's trying to prove he's in control. That's exactly what happened next. Kimmel shifted gears, bringing up a decades-old rumor about DeVito's behavior on the set of a classic sitcom. So Danny, there's this story that you used to throw tantrums when things didn't go your way. To clear that up, the accusation was out of left field and the audience fell quiet. Sensing the shift from playful to pointed, DeVito leaned back in his chair, his trademark grin replaced by a look of calm defiance. Jimmy, I've been in this game for over 50 years. You hear all kinds of stories, most of them nonsense. Anyone who's worked with me knows I show up, do the work, and treat people right. His response was measured, but there was an edge to it, a warning that Kimmel ignored. Oh, come on. Danny, don't be so modest. Kimmel pressed, leaning forward. You're telling me you've never lost it on set? Not even once. I find that hard to believe. The tension was now thick enough to cut. DeVito tilted his head, studying Kimmel like he was sizing up an opponent. I'm saying I don't waste energy on drama, Jimmy. I save it for the performance. Maybe you should try that sometime. The audience erupted in applause, some even cheering, but Kimmel's forced smile didn't reach his eyes. He leaned back, clearly rattled, but unwilling to let it go. "Wow, okay, tough guy," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Guess you're just too perfect for the rest of us." At this point, the segment was teetering on the edge. DeVito, still composed, tried to steer things back to his film, sharing a heartfelt anecdote about working with the young director. But Kimmel cut him off mid-sentence. Yeah, that's great, but let's talk about something juicier. You and your wife, Rhea, you guys have been together forever. What's the secret, or do you just put up with each other for the cameras?" The question was laced with condescension, and DeVito's jaw tightened. The audience shifted uncomfortably, picking up on the host's increasingly aggressive vibe. "I'll tell you what," Jimmy DeVito said, his voice low but firm. "Rhea and I have built a life together, raised kids, made art. That's not a punchline. It's real. I'm here to talk about my work, not to feed your tabloid fantasies." The rebuke was sharp, and the audience clapped again, louder. This time, Kimmel, visibly thrown, tried to play it off with a laugh. "Oh, relax, Danny, it's just a joke. You know, comedy. This is a comedy show." But the room wasn't laughing. The producer off stage was signaling frantically to cut to commercial, sensing the segment was spiraling out of control as the commercial break hit. The studio was a pressure cooker. DeVito sat silently, his eyes fixed on the floor, while his publicist whispered urgently in his ear across the stage. Kimmel huddled with his executive producer, gesturing animatedly, his face flushed with agitation. Crew members later revealed that the producer was begging Kimmel to dial it back, warning that the segment was veering into dangerous territory. But Kimmel, visibly defiant, brushed off the advice, muttering something about not letting DeVito run the show. The audience, still buzzing from the tense exchange, could feel the storm brewing as the countdown to go live ticked down when the cameras rolled again. Kimmel plastered on a smile, but it was brittle, like he was barely holding it together. DeVito, meanwhile, sat upright, his expression unreadable but resolute, like a man who decided he wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. Kimmel kicked off the segment with a forced joke about the weather, clearly trying to reset the mood. But the audience's response was tepid. He quickly pivoted back to DeVito, and any hope of a course correction vanished. "So, Danny," Kimmel said, his tone laced with mockery, "you're this big-shot producer now, right? Always sunny, all those projects. Ever get tired of playing the boss, ordering everyone around the jab?" Was blatant, painting DeVito as some overbearing tyrant. DeVito didn't flinch. "Producing is about collaboration, Jimmy," he said evenly. "It's about bringing people together to make something great. I don't order anyone around. I work with folks who share the vision." His calm delivery only seemed to irritate Kimmel further. "Sure, but you've got a reputation," Kimmel pressed, leaning forward like a prosecutor. "People say you're, let's say, intense, like you don't take no for an answer. That true?" The audience shifted, sensing the hostility creeping back in. DeVito's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice stayed steady. "I'm passionate, Jimmy. When you care about something, you fight for it. You'd know that if you ever took a risk on anything original." The dig landed hard, a subtle jab at Kimmel's formulaic late-night routine. The audience let out a mix of gasps and cheers, and Kimmel's smile vanished. "Oh, wow, okay," he said, his voice tight. "So now you're the artist and I'm just some hack, huh? That's rich, coming from a guy who's been milking the same sitcom for 20 years. The personal attack stung, and DeVito's composure wavered for the first time. "Always Sonny's still on because people love it," he shot back. "We take chances, tell stories others won't touch. What's the last thing you did that scared you, Jimmy? Besides bombing in front of your own audience?" The room erupted, some clapping, others murmuring in shock. Kimmel's face reened, and he gripped his desk like he was anchoring himself. The producer was now visibly panicked, waving at the director to cut. But Kimmel barreled on. "You know what, Danny? I don't need lectures from you." Kimmel snapped. "I've been doing this show for years, dealing with egos bigger than yours. You think you're untouchable? Because you're some Hollywood legend. News flash, legends fade." The audience fell silent, stunned by the venom in Kimmel's voice. DeVito leaned forward, his small frame radiating an intensity that filled the stage. "I don't think I'm untouchable, Jimmy. I think I deserve respect, same as anyone who walks through that door. You're the one acting like you're above it all." Kimmel scoffed, rolling his eyes. Respect you want respect, try not sending your team with a laundry list of demands before you show up. Don't ask this. Don't mention that what are you hiding, Danny? The accusation was a low blow implying DeVito was some diva dodging scrutiny. DeVito's jaw clenched, but he kept his cool. My team coordinates with your people to make a good show, he said. That's how it works. If you've got a problem with that, take it up with them, not me. Oh, I'm taking it up with you. Right now, Kimmel retorted, his voice rising. This is my stage, my rules. You don't get to waltz in here and act like you're doing me a favor. The audience was dead quiet now, the air thick with discomfort. DeVito stared at Kimmel, unblinking. I came here to talk about a film I'm proud of. He said, his voice low but cutting. If you're not interested, maybe I should find a host who is the threat hung in the air. And for a moment it seemed like DeVito might walk off. Right then the producer, now practically sprinting toward the stage, signaled for another commercial break, and the cameras cut just as Kimmel opened his mouth to fire back. The second commercial break did little to cool the inferno. Backstage, DeVito's team was in crisis mode, debating whether to pull him from the segment entirely. DeVito, however, remained seated, his face a mask of steely resolve as he waved off his publicist's pleas to leave. I'm not running, he reportedly said, his voice quiet but firm on the other side. Kimmel was pacing, ignoring his producer's desperate attempts to get him to apologize, or at least pivot to safer ground. He's not going to make me look like the bad guy, Kimmel snapped. Loud enough for nearby crew to hear, the stage manager later said. The tension was so thick, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room when the show resumed. The audience was on edge, their earlier enthusiasm replaced by a nervous anticipation. Kimmel, now visibly unhinged, didn't bother with pleasantries. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on DeVito like a predator sizing up prey. All right, Danny, let's cut the crap, he said, his voice sharp. You keep acting like you're above all this, but let's talk about the real you. Like what's with all the shady business deals? Word is, you've got a habit of screwing over your partners. The accusation was a bombshell completely. Out of nowhere, and the audience gasped audibly. DeVito's expression hardened, but he didn't rise to the bait. That's a serious claim, Jimmy, he said, his voice low and deliberate. You got any proof, or are you just throwing mud to see what sticks? The challenge was clear, and Kimmel faltered for a split second, clearly unprepared for DeVito's directness. I'm just saying what people are saying. Kimmel backpedaled, his smirk faltering. You've been around forever, you can't tell me there's no dirt. DeVito leaned forward, his gaze piercing. People say a lot of things, Jimmy, doesn't make them true. I've built my career on trust, not betrayal. You want to talk dirt? Look in your own backyard? The audience roared with applause, some even standing. But Kimmel's face twisted with rage. Oh, that's cute, he shot back. You're going to lecture me about trust, you with your whole lovable Danny act? Give me a break. Everyone in this town knows it's just a front. The personal attack was relentless, and DeVito's patience finally snapped. He stood up, his small stature somehow commanding the entire stage. I've had enough, Jimmy, he said, his voice booming, with an authority that silenced the room. I came here to talk about my work, not to be your punching bag. You want to play dirty, fine, but don't cry when it bites you. Kimmel laughed, but it was hollow, his confidence. Cracking. What, you're going to storm off now? Typical, can't handle a real conversation. DeVito didn't budge. A conversation goes two ways, Jimmy. What you're doing is a tantrum. I'm done with it. He turned to leave, and the audience erupted in cheers. Chanting Danny, Danny. Kimmel, now visibly panicked, stood up shouting over the noise. Yeah, go ahead, run. That's what you do when it gets tough, right? The taunt was desperate, and DeVito paused, turning back slowly, his eyes blazing. You think I'm running? DeVito said, his voice cutting through the chaos. I'm walking away because I've got better things to do than entertain your ego. You're not a host, Jimmy. You're a bully who's forgotten how to do his job. The words landed like a sledgehammer, and Kimmel's face went pale. The producer, now on stage, tried to intervene, but Kimmel shoved past him. You don't get to talk to me like that, he shouted, his voice cracking. This is my show. DeVito, unfazed, took a step closer. Then act like it. Stop embarrassing yourself. The audience was on its feet, some cheering, others stunned into silence. The director, realizing the segment was unsalvageable, cut to commercial again, but not before the cameras caught Kimmel's stricken expression and DeVito's unflinching stare backstage. Chaos erupted as security appeared seemingly at Kimmel's behest to escort DeVito out. "You need to come with us," one guard said, but DeVito held up a hand. "I'm leaving on my terms," he said, his voice calm but unyielding. The guards hesitated, clearly unsure how to handle the situation, as DeVito's team rallied behind him, ready to back him up the backstage corridor. Was a war zone of egos and adrenaline. DeVito, flanked by his team, moved toward the exit, with a quiet dignity, his head high despite the security guards trailing him. The crew, some openly shaking their heads at Kimmel's meltdown, parted to let him pass. A few whispering words of support. Kimmel, meanwhile, had stormed after them, his tie askew his face, a mask of fury and desperation. "Danny, hold up," he called, his voice echoing down the hall. "You don't get to just walk out like that." DeVito didn't break stride, but his publicist shot Kimmel a look that could have stopped traffic, signaling this wasn't the time for round two. The head of security, caught between Kimmel's orders and the optics of manhandling a Hollywood legend, tried to block DeVito's path. "Mr. DeVito, we need you to wait. Jimmy wants to talk this out." DeVito stopped, turning slowly to face the guard, his presence somehow towering. Despite his stature, "Talk's over," he said, his voice steady but laced with steel. "Unless you're planning to physically stop me, I'm leaving your call." The guard glanced at Kimmel, who was now hovering behind, then at the producer, who'd caught up and was frantically shaking his épaule. Head after a tense beat, the guard stepped aside and DeVito continued toward the exit. Kimmel, unwilling to let it go, pushed forward. "Come on, Danny, don't be like this," he said, his tone shifting to a forced calm, like he was trying to salvage his image. "It's just TV. We got heated. It happens. Let's shake hands. Move on." DeVito paused at the exit doors, his hand on the handle, and turned to face Kimmel one last time. "Jimmy, you don't get it," he said, his voice quiet but piercing. "This isn't about heat, it's about respect. You disrespected me, your audience, and every person who works for you tonight. That's not television. That's you failing at your job." The words hung in the air, and Kimmel's facade crumbled, failing. He sputtered, his voice rising again. "I've been doing this for decades. You think you can come in here and lecture me because you made a few movies?" DeVito didn't flinch. "I think I can call out nonsense when I see it." He said, "You had a chance to do something real tonight, to have a conversation. Instead, you turned it into a circus. That's on you with that." He pushed through the doors, his team following, leaving Kimmel standing in the hallway, speechless. For the first time all night, the fallout was immediate. Clips of the confrontation hit social media like a tidal wave, racking up millions of views before the show even finished airing. Hashtags like Kimmel Unraveled and Team Danny trended worldwide as fans and industry insiders dissected Kimmel's unraveling. Crew members, emboldened by DeVito's stand, started leaking stories about Kimmel's behind-the-scenes behavior, berating staff, dismissing guests' boundaries, and throwing fits when challenged. One anonymous writer claimed Kimmel had a playbook for breaking down guests who didn't play along, a tactic he tried on DeVito with disastrous results. By morning, the network was in damage control. A vague statement announced a brief hiatus for Jimmy Kimmel Live, citing scheduling adjustments, but insiders said executives were livid, with some pushing to suspend Kimmel indefinitely. DeVito, true to form, stayed above the fray. His team released a short statement. "Danny appreciates the support and is focused on his upcoming projects." When pressed for comment, DeVito only said, "I said what I needed to say," before returning to work on his film's press tour. The incident reshaped Hollywood's view of Kimmel. Publicists began blacklisting his show, wary of subjecting clients to his unpredictable attacks. Ratings tanked when the show returned, with viewers citing Kimmel's mean streak as a turnoff in industry circles. Pulling a DeVito became shorthand for standing up to a bully with grace and grit, a testament to the actor's unflappable resolve. For DeVito's fans, it was a reminder of why they loved him, not just for his talent, but for his integrity in a town that often rewards the opposite. Kimmel, meanwhile, tried to spin the narrative, posting a half-hearted apology on social media that blamed miscommunication and passionate discussion. It backfired spectacularly, with comments flooded by fans praising DeVito's class and calling out Kimmel's deflection. The mask was off. And no amount of PR could hide the cracks in Kimmel's carefully curated image. The confrontation exposed a truth Hollywood had whispered about for years. Beneath the affable host was a man who thrived on control, and when challenged, he crumbled. What do you make of this wild clash between Danny DeVito and Jimmy Kimmel? Was Kimmel way out of line? Or did DeVito push back too hard? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more unfiltered Hollywood stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video, and we'll catch you in the next one.